So far, 40 Israeli hostages have been released by Hamas, and including a 4-year-old girl whose parents were murdered right in front of her. Well, freeing those captives came at a high price. Israel had to halt its assault on Hamas terrorist strongholds.
Well, now the pressure's on Israel to keep the ceasefire going so more hostages can be set free. Chris Mitchell brings us the story from Jerusalem.
For the past 3 days, heartwarming scenes have played out here in Israel as families are being reunited after weeks of captivity since being kidnapped by Hamas. 14 Israelis were released on Sunday, including 4-year-old Abigail Edan, an Israeli-American. Hamas killed her parents in front of her during the massacre on October 7th.
I just spoke with President Biden with great excitement. Of course, also about the little girl, Abigail. What a joy to see her with us. But on the other hand, what a pity that she returns to the reality of not having parents. She has no parents, but she has a whole nation that embraces her, and we will take care of all her needs.
President Joe Biden took a direct interest in Abigail.
Though intensive U.S. diplomacy, she's now safely in Israel, and we continue to press and expect for additional Americans will be released as well. And we will not stop working until every hostage is returned to their loved ones.
So far, 40 Israelis have been freed, with more expected today for at least a total of 50. In Jerusalem and the West Bank, Palestinians celebrated the return of dozens of prisoners released in exchange for the hostages. Many of them committed attempted murder, stabbings, shootings, or threw Molotov cocktails. This Palestinian woman called for more kidnappings so more prisoners could be freed. It's likely more Palestinian prisoners and Israeli hostages will be released today. Israel's war cabinet is deciding whether or not to extend the ceasefire for up to 10 more days, with 10 hostages released for each day. That could prolong Israel's military campaign as much as 2 weeks.
I think every day that goes on with the ceasefire, it's going to be harder for them to restart the war machine. And that is exactly what Hamas intends. They understand that the longer this ceasefire goes on, the more pressure will build on Israel to continue that ceasefire indefinitely. And if they continue it indefinitely, then Hamas does not get wiped out and Hamas survives. That's their strategy here, I believe.
Despite the delay, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited IDF troops in Gaza and pledged total victory.
We're here in the Gaza Strip with our heroic fighters. We're making every effort to return our hostages, and at the end of the day, we will return everyone. We have 3 goals in this war: eliminate Hamas, return all our hostages, and ensure that Gaza does not return to be a threat to the state of Israel again.
Well, Chris Mitchell joins us now from Jerusalem. So, Chris, is this ceasefire likely to be extended? And is it hurting the Israeli military's campaign?
Well, first of all, Gordon, I think it's likely the ceasefire is going to be expanded. President Biden has already said he wants to extend the ceasefire. So what is that going to look like? It means that for every 10 hostages, the ceasefire is going to be extended by a day. And for every hostage, 3 Palestinian prisoners are going to be released. So it's likely the ceasefire will continue. But many here in Israel are very leery about this deal because what it does, it is going to hurt the military campaign. And it really puts Hamas in control of the war, which, as Chuck Colton said in our report, is exactly where they want to be. It gives time for Hamas to regroup, rearm, and reposition themselves when the war does resume. And it really puts them in charge of the time clock of the war, using these hostages sort of chips in their game with Israel.
Well, it looks like Israel is actually boxed in on this. How can you say, no, we're not going to take the hostages back. We're going to continue the campaign. It seems like they're being outplayed by Hamas right now.
I think that a lot of people over here feel the same way, Gordon. Really, Hamas is calling the shots, or you can actually say that Iran is calling the shots. And that really was exactly why Hamas kidnapped more than 240 Israelis and foreigners. They knew that Israel has a tender heart about this. They do want to get their hostages back. Remember, back in 2011, Israel had 1,100 prisoners in exchange for one Israeli soldier. So Hamas knew exactly what it was doing when it said that it was going to kidnap these hostages.
Yeah, and the current head of Hamas was one of those released. He had been convicted of murder. He murdered 4 Palestinians, and he was sentenced to life in prison, and they released him. How is the Israeli public reacting to this? What's their stand on the release of hostages?
Well, I would say right now, right in the very studio just earlier today, Gordon, I talked to an Israeli rabbi, and he said really no one's happy with this deal. Certainly everybody's happy with the return of the hostages, but the question is at what cost? It puts the IDF at risk, and maybe will the war be put off indefinitely? And as Israeli Ambassador Michael Oren said on 700 Club about a week ago, is Hamas going to be able to get away with murder? And so Israelis right now, they're battling between their soul and the body. On the one side, many Israelis are saying we need to rescue these hostages at all costs. The others say we need to save the state of Israel. And one told me earlier today, if the war ends and all the hostages are released with Hamas still in power, Israel has really lost. So it's really a nightmarish dilemma that Israel finds itself in. And I would add, Gordon, right now, the way Israelis are reacting also is in prayer. On Wednesday, there's going to be a prayer meeting at Israel's parliament, the Knesset. Christians and Jews are going to be gathering together to pray for Israel, protection for the soldiers, wisdom for the government. And really also on that day, it's a global African prayer movement on Wednesday. That was scheduled months ago. But it's also on the anniversary of November 29th, which is the UN vote for a Jewish state. And so many are feeling this is an existential situation for Israel, surrounded by their enemies, an potential rise of anti-Semitism. So where can they look for help? Many are looking to Psalm 121. I will lift up my eyes to the mountains. From where shall my help come from? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth.
Well, amen. And we will be joining in with that prayer on Wednesday, and we will be praying specifically that the plans of Hamas, it looked like they miscalculated. They thought they could derail the Abraham Accords, and the Abraham Accords, surprisingly to me, are actually holding very strong. They thought that they could prod Hezbollah into the war once Israel got involved in a ground war. Hezbollah will launch out of Lebanon. That didn't happen. And now they're playing their hostage card and trying to extend a ceasefire. But I believe the Prime Minister, I believe Netanyahu when he says, this is our goal, we're going to wipe out Hamas. And so when they run out of hostages to exchange, I think the Israeli military is going to go full bore back into it. So it's time to pray, and it's time definitely to pray for the peace of the land of Israel. Well, Chris, thanks for your insight, and thanks for all that you're doing in the Jerusalem Bureau.
Thanks, Gordon.
Well, here at home, a key voice is speaking out against the alarming rise of anti-Semitism. Israeli-American activist Noah Tishby is on a mission to spread truth and to warn the West about the threat of anti-Israeli sentiment. Charlene Aaron has her story.
This well-known Israeli-American once served as her country's first envoy for combating anti-Semitism. While Noah Tishby no longer holds that official role, her advocacy for her homeland continues, especially after October 7th.
This time around, they not only did it in the worst of ways, beheading of babies in their cribs, the burning of entire families alive, the taking a pregnant woman and slushing her belly and pulling out the fetus and beheading the fetus.
Tishby is no stranger in the fight against anti-Jewish hatred, and that hatred has only risen since the Israel-Hamas war began. Following the October 7th Hamas attack, a significant spike in anti-Semitic incidents have been reported across the U.S. Cases of harassment, vandalism, and assault have jumped by almost 400%. Tishby recently told the Friends of the Israel Defense Forces that underlying messaging paved the way for the Hamas attack and the atmosphere that followed.
The grooming, ongoing grooming of Western civilization through universities, the media, and social media, so that when the time came and the Islamic Nazis carried out the act of genocide, many in the West would celebrate it, justify it, and no longer tell the difference between good and evil.
Pro-Palestinian protests have broken out worldwide on college campuses and in major cities. Protesters have gone as far as ripping down posters of Jewish hostages still held captive by Hamas.
It's just horrifying to me how American youth have been brainwashed so badly to think that tearing down a photo of a kidnapped child is God's work. It's just, it defies logic on so many levels. It's fine if you don't agree with Israeli policies. That's totally okay. You don't like the government, that's totally fine. What is your excuse when there's been an intent to kidnap a child or to rape a child or to murder or behead a baby?
In September, Tishby reached through renowned entertainment Variety magazine to write about the dangers of anti-Semitism masquerading as anti-Zionism, the movement for the self-determination and statehood of the Jewish people in their ancestral homeland.
This obsessive hatred towards Israel is nothing but anti-Semitism in disguise. So when the Variety thing came out, I wrote an epilogue afterwards to just be like, I wrote this before this happened, and here it is upon us.
Tishby condemns the phrase "from the river to the sea," a rallying cry at many pro-Palestinian demonstrations.
The river is the Jordan River, the sea is the Mediterranean Sea, and from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, means ethnically cleansing the Jews from their ancestral land. There is no other meaning to it.
She also pushes back against those trying to equate October 7th with Israel's military campaign in Gaza, while also condemning the Hamas act of hiding behind innocent Palestinians.
Hamas have effectively turned Gaza into a terrorist base, and the entire city. Their intent is to use Palestinian people as human shields and get as many casualties as they possibly can while their leaders are hiding underground. The blood is on Hamas's hands.
Meanwhile, Tishby warns this entire moment should be seen as a wake-up call to other countries. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Well, it should be a wake-up call to all of us, because underlying this ideology is a war against all Western civilization, all that we hold dear. When Iran says that Israel is the little Satan, and then they say that we have a great Satan, well, that's you and I. And their intent is quite clear. They want us to go away. They're not going to be happy with just Israel going away. They want us to go away. So if you want to know the truth behind the Jewish and Arab claims to the land of Israel, we've put together a DVD that gives the historical background to the events that you're seeing unfold today. It's called Whose Land Is It? And in 90 minutes, you'll have the answers to questions such as whether or not Gaza and the West Bank are, quote, occupied territory, close quote. Why the Palestinian refugee crisis still remains a problem more than 75 years later. You can receive a DVD copy of Whose Land Is It? For a gift of any dollar amount. All you have to do is go to cbn.com/whoseland or call us 1-800-700-7000. Again, for a gift of any dollar amount, it's yours. Spend 90 minutes and you'll know the true history of whose land is it. What are the Palestinian claims? What are the Jewish claims to the land? I want you to have it. Call us 1-800-700-7000.